So we start on page 38. Have you been thinking about sequencing more since we started talking about it? You notice it when you go to a class, maybe?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm more aware of it in the class.
You're more aware of it now. That's good. That's good. That's why we're approaching it now. The way the class shakes down is in the beginning we kind of do these therapeutic yoga classes to get feeling good, and then we start to talk about this sequencing now, and we start to become aware of it, and then we write our own sequences up, and then you teach your own sequence. So, can you scoot over a little towards me? Okay. So the warm-ups. Do you have an idea already in your head about a potential warm-up sequence for yourself? Start to think about it. You know, you can just go straight to sun salutation A, sun salutation B. That's fine for this level, totally fine. Or you could do some warm-up, some kind of warm-up sequence. Then the way I kind of do it is, in between the categories of sequences, you can do arm strengthening stuff or core strengthening stuff. So if you go from page 38 to page 41, for instance, I wrote down a couple of arm strengthening options. One is the classic upward dog, downward dog vinyasa. That's the classic, vinyasa. You know. I like to use vinyasa as a verb, vinyasa. I think you'll hear some teachers using it as a noun, and they'll say, take a vinyasa. Either is okay. I think you sound a little cooler if you just say vinyasa. All right, so then I was thinking about other arm strengthening options. Three-legged dog, certainly on the arms, with the hips square or hips open. We've talked about that. Or crunches. Do you guys notice there's a lot of three-legged dog crunches? Put your knee over here, open it up. Put your knee over here, open it up, you know. For me, that doesn't work because it puts a lot of weight on my wrists. For some of you guys, I think you love it, right? You like that? It makes you feel strong, right, in your arms. Okay, so just, again, if I say something doesn't work for me and it works for you, put it in your class. I'll just hold downward dog. I'll just hold the base pose. So don't think if I say my body doesn't have a preference for it and you love it. Put it in there if you want, okay? Don't be afraid of that. This is your baby, your sequence. Push-ups with correct yoga alignment. What's correct yoga alignment in chaturanga? How should you have the push-ups?
Neutral spine, elbows over wrists.
Neutral spine, elbows in. Don't dip the shoulders too low. Stuff like that. You're not allowed to crazily turn your hands in and your elbows out and do crazy, CrossFit push-ups. You got to do the push-ups if you're going to do push-ups with a good alignment. Could also hold upper push-up. Do you guys like to hold upper push-up? No?
Yeah.
The gang plank I'm thinking is with the elbows down. Regular plank. With your hand upper top of the push-up. Top, but not down. Top. What's the number one alignment error that people get into if I tell them to hold upper push-up? What?
You do cow immediately.
You do cow immediately? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's good. What do they do with their elbows? Their elbows, they hyperextend. They lock them forward. I see that a lot. So careful of that in when people hold upper push-up. What do we say? If you want people to come out of hyperextension, what's the command? Micro bend the elbows, okay? Because you don't want them to bend it so far that they go down to chaturanga. Holding lower push-up position, chaturanga. You like it? Again, it hurts my wrist. I find it's a little aggressive. And most people, they will dip the shoulders. They'll get into some bad habits of that. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Maybe for 5 seconds or something, okay? But you see a lot of this shoulders up by the ears type of thing. Remember in Anusara, the whole purpose of last week and what were they telling you to do with the shoulders in relationship to your ears and your chest and get it back. I heard Danielle, she's a kind of Roots-inspired, John Friend-inspired teacher, and she was saying, get your heart moving forward faster than your shoulders. Here's your heart moving forward faster than your shoulders. Here's your shoulders moving forward faster than your heart. Okay, so think about that. Get your heart moving forward faster than the shoulders. Shoulders back, especially with weight bearing. Shoulders down with weight bearing. You see people holding chaturanga like that. I don't think it's too good. Regular push-ups. Boom, 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 boom. Push up, push up, push up, push up. I also, maybe I should put in there plank hinging. I like to hinge from downward dog to plank to downward dog to plank. Have you seen that? I like that one. That one's okay. You could also do upper push-up with one foot off the floor. That's tough. That enforces the core. So just some, these are like push-up options, just different ones. I mean, so many of them. And then there's side plank. Right hand down, left arm up. Do you guys like that? You like the side plank?
It bothers my wrist a little bit.
It bothers my wrist a little bit. Why? Is side plank symmetrical or asymmetrical? Asymmetrical. There's a left side and a right side. Remember, symmetrical poses just are like downward dog or plank. They just have the one side. So asymmetrical poses put all the body weight on one side. And where's the weight bearing in side plank? It's right on the wrist. So you have to have excellent alignment. Wherever there's weight bearing, you have to have excellent alignment. So asymmetrical weight bearing poses on one arm, be careful. Those are aggressive. Those are stronger than you think. So just side plank. If people are in side plank and you see that they're hurting, what can you do to make it easier?
Elbow.
You can put the elbow down. If it's the wrist that's hurting, they can go down to this. Or the knee. You could drop the knee. You could just go like this and do the knee down. This is actually called the gate pose, Paregasana. It's a nice one. Puts a lot less weight on the wrist. And then Vashisthasana, you can lift the leg up. You see people grabbing the big toe and flying it up like that. I call that the shooting star. You know what I'm talking about? It's a beautiful pose. It's a very beautiful pose. But all the weight is on that one wrist. So you better be ready for that. And not everybody in a 25-person class is ready for that with the wrists. And then I put in crow. You guys like crow? What is crow? Symmetrical or asymmetrical?
Asymmetrical.
No, it's symmetrical. There's only one thing with crow. Both hands are on the floor. It's perfectly symmetrical. Left side of the body, right side of the body, doing the exact same thing. And so people like crow, don't they? I mean, it's one of the first arm balances, isn't it?
It bothers my wrists, but I like it.
It bothers my wrists too, but I think it feels kind of cool in a way too. All right, so those are like arm strengthening options. So basically, and then skip to the next page. These are page 42. These are core strengthening options. So remember, with regard to the core, most people just talk about the front core. But I'm saying that there's a cylinder around here. There's a side core and a back core too. So there's a north, south, east, and west type of thing. So here's some core strengthening exercises. Single leg raises, opposite knee bent, this. Easiest, harder, hardest. Single leg crunches. I don't even know what I was thinking of. Single leg crunches. Very difficult advance only. I'm not. Single leg crunches. I guess I think it was something like this, which is very asymmetrical and tough. Then, with regard to the crunches, knees bent, feet on the floor. Like kind of this is a crunch. Knees bent, legs up, crunches. And then double crunches is more like this. But this puts a lot of pressure on a person's back. If somebody came and they were weak in their back, they do not want to do that. That's more of an advance. You guys like double crunches?
Yeah.
For us, our level, it probably might feel good. If not, just say back off. Just one leg at a time. Just do. While everybody else is doing double crunches, here could be, Miss Easy does it in the back of the room, just doing this. Just building her strength, not hurting herself. Still working the core. Not hurting the back. You're supported here. This knee is bent. This is on the floor. A lot less weight than this. When I do a crunch, okay, think of my spine, okay? Just trying to imagine my spine and my body. When I do a crunch, which part of my spine is compressing?
Lower back?
The front of the spine is compressing. The front of the... If I pull here, certainly the front of the cervical is compressing. But say I don't pull on my head and I just do this movement right here. It's probably the lumbar And it's the front of the lumbar that's compressing, compressing, compressing. So have you ever heard people say don't pull too much on your neck? Crunches is almost a misnomer. It implies that I should really be curling, and that's too much compression of the front of the spine. So you can do the exercise I often say, shoulders up, shoulders up. If I just try and go up, like to there, instead of going forward, it's just as hard, if not harder. And there's less like crunching compression.
Like you can just put your legs straight up and your arms up and like try to punch your
Yeah, that does it. That puts you right in your core, right? Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Bicycle, boat pose. But if you lay on your back, there's a couple, when I have clients who get a bad back, sometimes they go to physical therapy. If you're ever really hurting, you know, you go in the medical world, you get the MRI, you go to the doctor, bad back pain, and they usually prescribe physical therapy. And the physical therapist, one of the first things they teach you is this easy, like, pelvic tilt right here. Because they want you to start to get control over this part of your body so that you can hold the neutral spine. The neutral spine came from physical therapy. That's how I learned it. It's physical therapy. That's what they're going to teach you, neutral spine. They're going to say in every aspect of your life, you need to be in neutral spine. Driving your car, sitting there right now, in a yoga pose, you just always need to prioritize that as the number one thing, and that will give you the core strength. Because remember, neutral spine takes core strength of the front, the sides, and the back to support it, to hold it. Neutral spine is not like neutral stomach muscles. So then they're going to teach you this exercises so you come into neutral spine. You're not flattening with my back. I'm not pushing my lumbar down this way. I'm allowing a little curve of the lumbar up. Then I get my legs up like this. Now, I start to do the slowest movements, and they make you hold your spine in the exact same way. See how I'm not compensating? I'm not going like this. You know, I'm not like using my back to do the exercises. You set neutral spine, and then you learn to just barely control, like the slowest thing. And when somebody can start to control these and keep this little lumbar arched up, thoracic is pressing down, bra strap is down, lower back is up, and they can just control the slowest thing without overarching or flattening, that's how you're going to get out of back pain. They're going to teach you just those basic ones. Then they like to teach you the cat-cow. They definitely teach you the cat-cow. This is, again, mobilizing the pelvis area. And then they teach you this one for sure. This is definitely a new mix. But they're not going to teach you this. Or any of these seated forward bends. Why not? Yeah, the reason that somebody might have gotten into back pain is because they're real tight in their hamstrings and lower back. So when they sit on the floor, their pelvis is tipped upwards, and they'll be like this. This is my pelvis. Imagine it's tipped upward. So when they sit on the floor, I can't get into a neutral position sitting on the ground. If you see people sitting like this, they're not going to be able to sit there very long. And if you say, hey, come forward, they're going to be like this. This is locked backwards because they're and they're going to be, this is, so until somebody can spill the pelvis forward in a seated forward bend like this, basically, you got to get all this tipping forward and down. It's counterproductive to do any seated forward bends for somebody with a bad back until they have that mobility. And the reason they have the bad back is because they don't have that mobility.
What's the option then?
The option here would be this, over and over again with the strap, until they stretch out their hamstrings. So say you have somebody with a really bad back, okay? So the therapy would be teach them cat-cow here, right here. And then teach them neutral spine, so lift up the feet a little bit. This automatically engages my front core, but keep the neutral spine, and then just the littlest bit, you know, one leg, asymmetrical. The legs are going up and down, so this forces the core. Then maybe a little bit like this with the strap, but neutral, not allowed to flatten the back. Remember we talked about that. When you go on your back and you do this, everybody's back just flattens into the floor. but you're going to have to get them with this little arch and get this stretching a little bit. Then maybe, cat-cow like this. Then maybe this. Then perhaps like downward dog. And then all the way around again. Just start all over again on that same sequence. 3 times through, 4 times through until they're fatigued and strong. That would be a session for somebody with a bad back.
And then standing forward?
Yeah, you could do standing poses. Eventually they're going to be able to stand up. And again, because their pelvis, like if your pelvis tips forward, it's easy to come forward like this. If their pelvis doesn't tip forward and they're really tight, they're going to kind of be like this, and you're going to see. So you're just going to have to say, have them come here and then get into the neutral spine. And then just gently come down, gently straighten. That's going to be tough for them to get into the hamstrings without aggravating their back. But yeah, at a certain point, that same person would benefit from doing just Warrior 2. But not too much like this kind of stuff, See how I just went out of neutral to bind and stuff like that? And no twisting. They're not going to be twisting their spine. They're not going to sit in deep spinal twist. See how this is really puts pressure on. This is so asymmetrical on one side.
How do you teach a class to make sure that one person is doing all this other stuff?
You wouldn't be able to teach a class like that. I'm telling you for private lessons.
Oh.
Just file that up here, yeah. Unless you advertised it, say you're in a certain situation where you said, yoga for bad backs.
Well,
And then everybody who came in, but it's going to be a smaller population probably.
Would you like, sorry, you can go first.
I know yesterday I went to a very interesting, where I live, they have yoga classes. I never go because I always come to Vermont. So yesterday I was like, I'm going to try it. There was a class called Slow Flow or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole class was us on our back doing hamstring stretches.
Yeah.
Just the way we do it here.
Yeah.
And there was like 10, 12 people in
Oh,
the
cool.
class doing
So
it.
that's good.
So it was like 1 hour of just doing. I was like, I didn't really have to come to class. That a lot.
All
of
on
people,
your back though, no standing poses.
everything on the back, everything.
Cool. All right.
Just have hamstring stretches and kick openers.
Cool. Yeah, that's good.
So.
If you're in a bigger class and you're planning on doing like twists and stuff,
Yeah.
can you start off by asking like, does anyone have like any specific injury? So like when it comes to like the twist time and the meet, you can like go to that person and be like, don't twist.
Yeah, you could start that, but then you're going to have to remember that person, and it's tough. I mean, it's very tough. That's why this book that came out called The Science of Yoga, one of the kind of conclusions that it came to is that group classes are not ideal for everybody. There's certain people who are injured, they should not be in that group class because the teacher can't remember everybody, keep an eye on everybody, and doesn't know what everybody's feeling. So I used to struggle with that. I used to think, shoot, man, should I back up? Like, am I hurting people here? And all I can say is there's basically 2 kinds of yoga. There's workout yoga, and that's the kind of yoga I teach. I'm teaching workout yoga. And there's therapeutic yoga. And I think that what you can say is in the beginning of a class, hey, if you came here because you're hurting, you need to go to therapeutic yoga. And I would recommend that you go to Elaine's class. You can still stay for this class, and I'll try to help you, but be careful. Because this is workout yoga, and see what I'm saying? Or come to one of my other classes that's a therapeutic intervention class. So, and you guys, when you come out of here, I hope you'll be able to teach both therapeutic yoga and workout yoga and know the difference between the 2 of them. Right now, we seem to be talking more about therapeutic yoga. So, the crunches. There is a way to do, go on your back for a second and lift your knees up. Just swing your legs around the front and lay on your back and lift your legs up. Head on the floor, not on the bolster though. So keep your knees bent, but keep your hips over your knees over your hips. Don't let your knees come. Yeah, now keep your heels on the same level as the knees. Now hook your toes back towards you. Okay, so you have a 90 degree, perfect 90 degree. Okay, now arch your back maximum. Put your chest way up. That's a good arch in your lower back, but now press your bra strap down, the thorax. See that? That's the perfect neutral right there. Now, see if you can hold that, no compensation, and just do your little toe tapping. Tap one toe, one leg. Tap your toe, not your heel. Yeah, point it forward a little bit and move forward. Slow. And don't let your spine move. Don't let yourself go into any cat-cow type of stuff. It's tough, right? So that's good core stuff. Now, put your legs back up into the 90-degree shelf, the original position, okay? Now, go out of neutral, but flatten your back, flatten.
Really brings your knees.
Yeah, keep your knees forward, but flatten. That's not neutral, but it's a hell of a front core strengthener, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't you feel? So I consider, now put your feet on the floor. I consider that a legitimate exercise. That teaches people a lot of front core strength,
So
even though
Bob,
it's not
To get into neutral, it's like you arch your back
Yes, arch the whole thing first,
and
then press down where your bra strap joins, right between your shoulder blades.
there.
Exactly, and keep a little bit right above your butt. Feel that?
Yeah.
I see that you have it. I see that you got that with that. Okay, cool. Come back sitting up. So I want to give you that option because sometimes we get into core strengthening options and it's all like this. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, choo, choo, choo. You know, it's all this move. And you can just lay here and flatten your back. It's not neutral, but man, is this really strong on my front core. So I can just hold this. Sometimes the teachers even say, push here and push back here, you know, and flatten everything. It almost knocks the wind out of you. It demands so much, you know, Uddiyana Bandha. Stomach is in on both inhale and exhale. That'll demand Uddiyana Bandha. So those type of core strengthening exercises are better for people with a bad back, the ones where you hold the pose rather than movement-oriented core strengthening. Movement-oriented core strengthening is good for workout yoga, people who are already pretty healthy. You like bicycle crunches?
Yeah.
You like that, bicycle crunch? I mean, if you have no problem with your back, I love this. I even like to do legs straight. To me, this, if I do 50 of these, my stomach burns. It's good.
I like it.
You know, I think it's kind of cool.
I took
I like it.
Pilates class that said you shouldn't be doing that because you're just like twisting your spine so many.
Yeah, I mean, in almost every exercise, you can think of a positive and a negative. Pilates is very specifically, they're not into twisting at all. So Pilates is a therapeutic way to strengthen your core, and they don't believe in twisting. Yoga, if you have a healthy spine, we twist a little bit. It's a destabilizing move, though. It's destabilizing the core, you know. I mean, you're strengthening the front, but it's also destabilizing the back a little bit. So if you have back pain because you're already overly destabilized, you would probably just want to hold these symmetrical things and just do some very gentle, you know, you wouldn't want to move like that. But a lot of people do like the bicycle crunches. Then the boat pose, Navasana. So you guys like this one? No?
I like it a lot.
You like it? I love it, but
I
it's
love
hard.
it too.
My back and my spine a little bit achy after a while.
Yeah,
I was told that that's because I gotta strengthen my core.
sure, maybe so. And keep the neutral, keep the arch.
I can't keep it. Like
I
I
can't
can't
do
have
it.
my legs straight and my back.
No, well then go ahead and put back here and just prioritize keeping your spine. Like you can hold on here and make it quite a bit easier, but keep your arch, keep the neutral. Don't allow this.
And in Navasana, while the legs are supposed to be straight or randomly.
I wouldn't put it like that. I wouldn't say they're supposed to be straight. It's harder. If your legs are straight, it's way harder. I mean, that's more like the ideal of the pose. But the most important thing is neutral spine, I think.
Okay.
So however you need to hold the neutral spine, bend the knees, put the hands behind here. This has to be arched up though. It can't be like this. Like you see people, you know, they're rounded and they're trying to straighten their leg. This is just, it's just dumping everything into the back, compressing the front of the lumbar, completely out of neutral. Not
My
good.
back is straight, but it still is like achy my spine.
Do you guys not like it on your back too?
Yeah.
Does it hurt your back because your mat might be thin or something like that? I mean, there's some problems with that shape. You need some padding of either your butt or the mat. And you need to know how to keep the neutral spine and know how to rein it in with the knees bent. It's a traditional abdominal exercise of asana though.
Sharon does a really good ab exercise that we get a block and we put it in here.
Uh-huh. And
then
you
we
cross
wrap
the legs.
across and go like that, and it's really good.
Yeah, she's developed a
The
little
block in
thing.
here, so you hold on to the block and try to spread your feet out and while keeping the neutral spine.
She's got a nice therapeutic approach to teaching that pose, definitely, with the blocks and the squeezing.
One of our cues is actually like try and drag your ass like back towards your hand, and that keeps the neutral spine straight.
Cool.
And sometimes I don't even feel like lifting my arms up because you're pulling your butt towards your hands, and you still get that core firing.
That's cool. I noticed that in her classes, she's been teaching Navasana in a more specific way, like more detailed way. I think that's really good. I want you guys to pay attention to that. I put in your aircraft carrier pose. That's more like a low Navasana, like this.
I don't like that.
You do like this?
No, I don't.
I mean, it's really demanding on your
Hurts your
back.
Lower back.
It's really demanding on the back. Look, I'm shaking. I'm making sure I have neutral. I'm not just.
That's like stressful position.
It's very demanding on your back. Very. Yeah. Upward mountain pose. Oh, I put this as core strengthening. I used to teach this a lot, like this, and then make this core. This is what I would call upward mountain. I put that in core strengthening option. And then I put the gangplank pose and the side gangplank pose in the core strengthening instead of the arm strengthening. Notice I didn't put these in the arm strengthening thing. I put them in the core because to me this is more about core than arm strengthening. So I put all these in core strengthening. But I mean maybe they're arm strengthening too. I could have put them in the arm strengthening. And then laying on back poses with lumbar, lower back arch. That's just what I taught you before. That's like that therapy that you do where you make sure you have neutral spine and you do the toe tapping. So, mix in core and or arm strengthening options between categories. That's the easiest. Between sequences, that's harder. Or between the left and right side of a sequence. That's the hardest, okay? So, do you understand that? So, say you're teaching a class. So you have these page 41 and 42. These are arm strengthening options and core strengthening options. So say I'm going to do a triangle sequence of triangle and half moon. So I'm about ready to launch into my triangle sequence and say it's the first of a standing forward bend. So that's the first of a category of standing forward bends, triangle pose. So before I do that, I might have somebody, do some core strengthening type of thing like this, or we might have just come from, vinyasa, and then they come up, or we might just be starting at a three-legged dog, and then they come up, and they're going to start their triangle, half moon. Say it's a little two-part hip open sequence like that. Now, I can vinyasa, and then I can say, okay, now, do some core strengthening, do gangplank, do side gangplank. Then we're going to do the other side. Then I'm going to come back in and do the other side. That's the hardest. If you do core strengthening stuff in between the left and right sides of a sequence that you're in, it can be really tough. You're just doing more. You're just doing more of them. As opposed to, say I just wait for the core strengthening or the arm sequencing after the whole right side and left side of the sequence is over. Do you know what I'm saying? Or the easiest would be just do a little bit of core or arm strengthening in between the categories. You can kind of play with that. I mean, this is just the way I laid out. So go back to 38 now. And that's why in that small print in between the categories, I wrote core and or arm strengthening options. But you could move those in between the sequences, which are within the categories. For instance, don't worry so much about warm-ups. Warm-ups, but think of the standing forward bends, okay? Which we didn't quite finish talking about those. This is the main category of power yoga. How many standing forward bend sequences do you see people teaching in classes?
3.
Yeah, 3. Maybe, yeah. What, there's usually some Warrior 1 sequences. Going into some warrior two sequences, maybe some triangle sequences, maybe this, maybe 4, maybe 5. This is the main category, is my point. So, with the standing forward bends, we talked about standing forward bend, that's Uttanasana, that's this. We talked about all these different squat poses. Emily told us, don't, if you drop all the way down to here, there's no engagement of the leg muscles. It just kind of dumps everything right into the knees. So kind of staying up forces you to stay muscular and protects the knees. Triangle family. I think that's where we got to last time.
Yes.
Go to page... What is it? 49. Triangle series or triangle family. Okay, now I'm saying in the triangle family, it's all the poses that are forward bends with the legs straight. Except for Prasarita Padottanasana. This is a straddle family. So,
Wouldn't half moon be a
you say what?
leg?
What?
Wouldn't half moon just be a balancing on one leg?
Yeah, half moon is kind of a two-category pose. It's a balancing on one leg pose. Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
maybe a dumb question, but can you explain again what's the difference between series sequences and categories? Because I think they're
Between series.
sequencing and categories. Can you give me an example?
Wait, I don't understand what you're saying.
Category.
Categories.
Categories. Okay. The categories are on page 38. The categories are on page 38. The categories are warm-ups, standing forward bends, balancing on one leg poses, seated forward bends and hip flutters, back bends, inversions, and palm poses. Those are the categories, okay? The sequences are different sequences within those categories, of which we're now in number 2, standing forward bends. Yeah. And just like Ariana's pointing out, there's some overlap. I mean, maybe a standing forward bend is also a one-legged balancing pose too. So, it's not like this is set in stone. It's kind of a rough outline. So, triangle sequence. I'm in triangle. Where's the weight bearing? Feet. So, how do the feet have to be aligned? What's the alignment of the feet? The back foot has to be turned in. It definitely does. And this has to go to the middle of this. So you can't allow this in triangle. Nor could you allow this too much. Inner arch to here, and this foot has to be diagonal, and this foot is straight. That's where the weight bearing is. So that's where you have to have the most emphasis of alignment.
Paul, is it right that warrior is heel to heel? And
Warrior
triangle
1 is heel to
Just
heel, and
warrior
warrior 2 is heel to instep.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. I'm going to get there in a second. So, in terms of triangle pose, how wide should the legs be apart?
One leg.
4 feet? What was it?
One leg.
One of your leg lengths. One of your leg lengths apart. So, why? What do people want to do? They want to do shorter. Why? It's easier. The shorter you are in these standing ones, the easier it is. This is like nothing in triangle compared to this. Now, I'm even wider than my legs probably, but this is where I have to go to get something out of it now for triangle. Okay, so that's triangle. What can I do with my arms, this arm in triangle?
You can bend it down.
And you put it behind you, this type of thing.
Forward.
Forward, both arms, Why does it not really matter what I'm doing with this upper arm?
Because that's not where your weight
There's
bearing
no
is.
weight on that. I'm not going to hurt myself up here by doing anything. All the weight's here. So watch it, because what will the body do? It'll try and dump weight onto the lower hand. It'll go like this. Remember this we talked about? Or even here. You shouldn't bow this one in with weight, or it'll come to the floor. And remember, this hand position is okay, this hand position is okay, flat is okay, on a block is okay. My most dreaded hand position is this one right here. See this? It hurts to even demonstrate, so take a look at it. When I do that, I'm dumping weight into these minor joints. So what I'm doing is saying, in order to get lower down in the pose, I'm going to put weight bearing on these minor little joints. So there's no reason for that. And you'll see it, I would say it's one of the most common errors. When we're doing these long sequences here, doing all the different things, people's hands will go from here eventually to that. And it hurts. You'll feel it. That'll be like the primary area where you'll start to feel pain sensation. So no weight bearing in the hands. The standing poses are about the legs, not about, the arms, the hands.
I had someone tell me that, and I quite liked it because it allows you to pull up. But if you can get the yogi toe lock,
Yeah.
but
Pull up
but
on
then pull up on it, so you're not dumping
So you're not going down, pulling up. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the yogi toe lock, what tradition does that come from in triangles? Ashtanga. That's Ashtangism. You'll see that in the triangle. But it's nice because you're pulling up. You're not.
Yeah, and you're not putting
You're
any
not
weight.
waiting.
Because if you put this on the floor, it's really easy just to be like, oh.
Right. But if I tell my whole class, I have a whole class, and I say, everybody grab the yoga toe lock down. And that's the most important thing, and that's what Ashtanga says. Grab the yoga toe lock no matter what. What happens to my alignment in order to do that?
That's not good.
You'll see a lot more like this, of this type of stuff, where my butt sticks way out, and I kind of lose the whole thing. Because I was just told, do this at all costs, And really therapeutically, like Iyengar-ish, you should use a block, not go so far down, and just stay in this really good horizontal plane alignment. Okie doke. So then half moon comes right out of triangle because it's basically the same thing, and it moves you into a different category, so to speak. I guess now you're in a one-legged balancing pose. I include it in the triangle family because it's still both legs straight, but yeah, it's kind of two categories on that.
Well, and on half when you do the dancer pose,
Yeah.
which you that opens the hip and it kind of makes it into a triangle.
But half moon is also open hip,
Oh.
okay? Isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
that's why you go from triangle, open hip, to half moon. Now, when we start squaring the hip down here, that's coming in this sequence. So to grab back for dancer like this, you guys like that?
Yeah.
It's aggressive. It definitely facilitates the arched back in a forward bend.
I love it because it's such a part of it.
It's a cool pose. A lot of people love it, and I don't try and deny people from doing it, but it's
hard.
It's aggressive.
It's hard to just do in class. Like really
What's-
fast.
And also to do it from the down position, you're already down, and you're kind of waving your hand behind your back,
Yeah.
where are you? To kind of start it from an up position, open the hip, and then kind of build it from here. Even if I sometimes set a block underneath where I think somebody's hand would be. To ever go from starting a position up to moving it down is way easier than starting something down and coming back up, correct?
Yeah.
Just because of gravity. So so those are the only two hip open ones in the triangle sequence. Okay? Only triangle and half moon are hip open. All the rest are hip square. So starting with number 3, twisting half moon. So say I was going to do all of this sequence. Here I am in triangle. You got them doing something with their arms, tiring out there, squeezing their legs together. You got the good foot alignment. You're talking about that. Then they launch into half moon. Not too much weight gets to go in here. It's mostly all in here. Then they do twisted half moon. Then it's here and here. All twists are hip square, right?
Yeah.
So now we're in hip square. So now, like I told you in sequencing, I wouldn't necessarily go back to hip open again. Once I've gone to hip square, I'm going to finish the sequence off hip square. That's my style. Like I told you, you can switch back and forth once or twice, but not too
I like
much.
your style. I like your
No.
style because when they have me like,
It's hard to teach. It's hard for you to teach. It's hard on people's back. People are looking around. Is this hip square? It's easier for you to just categorize it like that. In fact, let me just show you where I kind of wrote this down, basically. So, I think it's on about page 43. Go to page 43.
Well, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Hip square.
Okay.
Because sometimes when I'm in your class and a couple other teachers, my hips are square for so long, and it could be like an impingement that I lose, like my legs start to get tingly and numb, and I don't know if it's because I'm trying, and that actually going back to hip open again relieves that tingly, and I can shake my leg out before I go into pyramid again.
Okay. I do realize the way I teach the sequences, I usually start with a warrior one sequence, and maybe we interlace, come forward, maybe there's a twist and pyramid. That's all hips square. Then I go into the, usually this sequence, you know, this eagle pose sequence, and that's all hips square too. And I definitely see, if I play those ones out for a really long time, people are ready to open their hips.
Right.
I see people like starting to go into warrior two and
Is it
stuff.
just me, or is it anyone else that it happens to?
You guys notice that?
Because
I get tingly when it's when we're doing one leg for a constant time. That's my muscles.
It's not like tingling, you
feel
know.
the muscles.
I don't notice that. For me, the hip square stuff feels great. I do know what you're saying in that when we move into the final, that's why sometimes I jump up and down and I go, warrior two! Because I know everybody's ready to finally start a hip open sequence. So there might be a little of that, of playing it too long with the hip square stuff and not allowing the hip open stuff a little earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just play it. I think a lot of these sequences I see that like Mateo, Amy, Sharon, they pretty quickly come up into warrior one and open into warrior two, don't they?
Yeah.
A lot earlier than me.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that feels good for people. Maybe that is why they're doing that. Okay. So
I went to a class the other day here with a teacher, and I was so conscious about what she was doing. You told us the other day that you need to first do like hip square and then hip open, and she was like going all over the place, and I wasn't feeling the class.
yeah. So this is.
It was like a fun little flow, but I was like, it's not doesn't feel right.
You
And
know,
then
you
you
guys
turn
look at it.
back
Now,
and
maybe
then
for
you turn
her it did. Maybe she was really strong and mobile, and she's easily can switch back and forth to hip open, hip square, and do a whole bunch of things. But just be conservative. When you guys first start teaching, play it cool. Some people, I don't know if you did my teacher training, I only started to really emphasize this in maybe the last 5 teacher trainings. Prior to that, people that trained with me, I wasn't as clear on it, and I think sometimes they do go into some of those.
She was getting really creative, but it wasn't feeling.
Right, because you never know if you should
It
be
was
square or
really
open.
creative, but it was just not. It was
Too great.
Yeah.
too creative.
So looking on page 43, a couple things. Dynamic movement versus static stretching and strengthening. I'm going to divide what we do into 2 categories. One is dynamic movement. External action is emphasized. When inhale, exhale is specified, it's one definition of vinyasa, the breath movement system. This is not good for people with arthritis or overly flexible people who hyperextend, a repetitive pushing movement. Good to awaken energy, mobilize joints, get moving in the morning. Examples, cat-cow, hinging plank, push-ups, single leg presses in warrior, squat presses, moving in poses. So, as opposed to static stretching and strengthening, internal action like muscular energy, muscular contraction, bandha awareness is emphasized. Poses are held for a breath count or a time duration. It's often harder to hold a pose than dynamic movement. So examples are holding cat, holding cow, holding plank, holding chaturanga, holding warrior, holding squats. So the deal is we mix it up. We do some of both in all of them. Our classes are not all of one. So you might have people, holding squat pose, and it's hard. 1 minute of this and your legs are burning, you're really feeling. Or you might allow some little dynamic movement to get going a little bit, but not when we talk about, not deep knee squats like that, just a little bit of movement. Or you might be holding this and say, okay, stomach bandha, in. I'm just holding it, as opposed to allowing this dynamic movement. So some poses are movement oriented, and other poses you're holding them. Even sitting here, I might sit here, like I can sit in Virasana. This is holding a pose. Adding a little, cat-cow here is dynamic movement, with the spine at least. I guess the legs are still static. So, and then basically the bottom of page 43. When facing the front of the mat, all poses are only of 2 kinds. Hips square or hips open. There's only 2 things that you can do. That's it. So, most poses should be hips square. What are the poses where we're allowed to open the hips and they're hip open poses? Warrior two, triangle, and half moon. Those are, there's not many others besides those. Those are your basic ones. But how many variations are there off of warrior two? There's all that side angle, binding, all that.
Peaceful.
Yeah. All twists are hips square. And then the three that I think give people a lot of confusion are three-legged dog, standing split, and perhaps splits. So, three-legged dog, which is it? Hips square or hips open?
Square.
It's two different poses, really. Hips square is better for you, but hips open, this is also an accepted pose. This is definitely hips open. But what do most people do? They float about halfway in the middle. They don't ever square this one, nor go for this one. They kind of just...
trying to get their leg off.
it's a way of the body to be lazy. And for sure, Warrior 3.
Yeah.
It's
hard
It's
to square.
so hard to do hips square, you know? Like in this, basically. This just, it's so much easier to just tip it. And then, you know, now it's kind of half hip open, but this should be hip square, you know? It should
You're so
be.
low.
You know, I'm not even really that good at it, but people are getting confused on those. They're thinking Warrior 3 is a hip open pose because it's easier to do that, but really it should be a
And
hip
down
square pose.
Warrior 3, your back should be like in line with, ideally.
Yeah, ideally with your
But
heel.
never, because I tend, I'm aware, but I tend to go like straighten my back.
In Warrior 3? Well, what is Warrior 3? A forward bend or a back bend?
Forward bend.
It's a forward bend. So what does the spine want to do to make it easier?
Then forward.
Right, so what's the command to move me back to neutral from...
Arch it, bring your heart forward.
Yeah, I need to arch here a little bit and not round my chin to the chest. I need to get a little bit more into a back bend, so maybe that's good for you. You don't want to round and slump it forward bends to move back to neutral. Okay, so, and then basically at the top of page 43, these are arm stretching options, shoulder opening options. So, first one is prayer pose. If somebody's shoulder is hurt, this is a legitimate place to keep this back. This is okay. So, if we're doing Garudasana and their shoulder's all messed up, or they have a broken wrist or something, they can just do the leg portion of it and just neutral. This is symmetrical. This makes their shoulders symmetrical. So this is not symmetrical. Interlacing hands behind the back. Do you guys like this?
Yeah.
It's just one of the greatest. Heart opening, shoulder mobilizing. Head of the arm bones back. That's what those MSR people are saying, right? Boom, head of the arm bones back. This gets it back. But then this pitches you into what? A forward bend or a back bend? It pitches you into a back bend. So what's the command to kind of neutralize from a back bend?
Bring your navel.
Front ribs in, navel in, tuck the tail along type of stuff, and that'll flatten back there.
How do your hands have to be in that position?
Then this one, what do you guys hear about? This is easier, right? This is what the body defaults to. This is far harder. See how the wrists stay together? And you'll see a lot of this type of stuff. See how it's asymmetrical now? And people will be like, no, it's straight. They just won't have any awareness of it at all. So, like that. Sometimes even teachers have taught this. You reverse it and push back. It's really hard for me.
Well, I cannot, I'm not able to keep that. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm sweaty, but I always lose the position.
Why do your hands want to fly apart? Why? Why? What's happening with your body?
Your shoulders are tight.
Your shoulders are tight, and so you're pulling them back, and you're creating torque, and then you have to hold on for dear life with your fingers, and wrists, which might not be that strong.
What about doing
My
some
fingers are
shoulder?
not strong?
I don't know. Maybe if you're, can you keep this together? You can tell if your fingers are strong is if you can keep the wrists together and symmetrical, and then kind of semi-straighten your elbows like that.
Can you do a shoulder opener on the
No, your wrists are way far apart. Get your wrists together like this. Now straighten your elbows. No, see, yes. But you're hyperextending too in order to do that. Now she's hyperextending, but why am I not too worried about her hyperextending? There's no weight on it, but she's very much hyperextending. In order for her to keep her wrists together, she totally dumps it into her hyperextended elbows. Turn around the other way and show them.
I think I can't. I don't know.
So say I'm Mr. Yoga Teacher here. Hang on, let's just stop for a second. Say I'm Mr. Yoga Teacher. No, and I say, I want you guys to hug this together. I want you to have your palms, get them all the way together. Now lift your arms off your bum and straighten your elbows. Look, did you see how she just reversed that right there? And this still came apart. It still came apart. So for her, those goals are no good for her. She's got to keep it micro bend and allow this to come apart.
How do I do it?
Wait, so you want to
Just do it like that. Just do it, and just try a little bit like this, and go to about just to about there.
So
Do your fingers feel like they're falling? Now roll this back. You know, it's okay. It's all right. But do you see how she's almost unable to stretch her strong shoulders without the hyperextension of the elbows? So that's why you can never say what you should do in a pose. You can't say it's got to be like this. Now me, I don't hyperextend in my elbows. I think I can do it. I can keep this together, and I can straighten my elbows. And tell me if they hyperextend. They're straight though, right?
Yeah.
And the wrists are together. They're not apart.
So they have to be together.
Here's more towards hyperextension. But I can kind of keep it a little micro bent and keep it straight and keep it
So
together.
they have to be together, the hands?
No. Let them go apart. In her case, I would definitely say keep them apart.
What about doing a shoulder opening series on the floor before that?
Yeah, that's fine.
But
But you're going to see a lot of this arms behind the back stuff. For me, this is like the strength of my asana practice. I'm strong in my shoulders, wrists, hands, really strong, but also I have excellent mobility in my shoulder. I've never broken my arm. I've never dislocated my shoulder. I used to play a lot of golf. My hands are real strong for all of this type of action. You know, my
People that
forearms
lift
are
weights
strong. And I don't hyperextend. I'm not prone to hyperextension. So for me, that's like a strength area. For women who are less strong in their shoulders, they're overly mobile. They default into mobility and flexibility. And what you need is, don't go as far. Don't try to use your elbows to open up your shoulders. Maybe do a laying on the floor. Remember when we laid on the floor and did this one back and stuff like that to open your shoulders, other stuff like that. But how many of these things? Does it get confusing?
Yeah.
You just go into that yoga room and you kind of let the chips fall as they may. You know, definitely say, I don't want you guys to get injured. Don't go too far. Pay attention to your bodies. We know that hyperextension is never really good, but if there's no weight bearing on it, it's not the end of the world either. But there's going to be, you're going to have 25 people. You don't know. There's going to be, you know, in the class, there's going to be people just standing there who are like more like Luis. He's strong, but kind of came from being tight. As opposed to your standard woman who might be, you know, loose, and they're standing right next to each other on the mat, and one needs to emphasize one thing and one. So that's just the way the group classes are. You just do your best and smile and, you know, keep it moving and talk neutral spine. Don't go too far. Don't try too hard. Listen to your body, and that's, you know, usually it works out. Fewer people get injured in classes than I think. Like this guy that said the group class is dangerous. He's talking about people who need therapeutic yoga. I mean, of all the people who are doing asana practice, how many classes were there this morning of asana just in the United States? A lot. I mean, way over 1,000. I'd say there was probably, what, 5,000 classes or something already this morning? You know, a lot. There's hundreds in each state on a Saturday morning. And how many people are in each class? At least 10? So you're talking about, you know, 50,000 people did asana practice this morning. How many got injured?
10.
A certain percentage. I don't know what it is, but it's not like 25,000. It's not like 50%, you know. Some small percentage did get injured, but I had 50 people. There might have been some injuries in there. I don't know. They didn't come up and say, hey, I hurt myself. They just, you know, got out the door quickly. But they might have. I'm not saying nobody got injured in my class. I don't know. I really don't know. But nobody was like, came out of a pose, laid on their mat, held their shoulder, held their back, left and said, I'm hurt badly, okay, I need physical therapy. Nobody left like that. out of 50 different bodies. So there's a little margin for error in this stuff. Okay, so basically then we go through this, hands behind the back prayer. Do you guys like this?
No.
And this is brutal on your wrist.
Yeah.
I would say most of the people can't even do it. It cramps.
I get stuck on it.
I could do it.
It's a crazy thing to do on your wrists, shoulders, chest. Yeah, it's really crazy on the wrists, I think. It's a very much of a wrist.
So I feel it.
You feel the shoulders. Eagle arms. Okay, do you guys like this?
Yeah.
I like this. It's just fun. It's fun. You don't like it?
I don't know how to get it.
I know. The problem is people put their thumbs facing away from them, and here's their fingers. You gotta flip your thumbs towards you and slip the one fingers behind the thumb. Get your thumbs facing forward. This is it.
She was good at me yesterday.
Yeah, I am super.
Whatever muscle that is.
That's it. That's it.
That is where I'm exactly where I'm
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of crazy things. Usually instead of, if I'm in a class and I see somebody doing it wrong, I don't say, make sure, I just go over and I'm just like, you know,
I can do it, but like.
and I just do it for them. And then they're like, oh, that's like a big aha. They're like, oh, that's how it's, but you'll see the beginners will be like, you know, they won't quite get it.
But the thumbs look to your.
The thumbs point towards the nose. Yeah, the thumbs point towards you. That's one of the keys. Then this.
And
I mean,
away
this
from
is
your
another.
face.
This is another. Do you guys like it?
Yeah.
Only on
I
one
can't.
side.
If you hurt your shoulder, say you dislocated, if say you fell on your shoulder skateboarding when you're 8 years old, you probably can't do it on one side. You know, that type of thing. Just
I can do it, but it hurts my wrist on one side.
it fires your hands. It puts fire into the palm of your hand.
It's impossible for me to do it without.
Yeah, see, he comes from being tight and strong, not flexible and loose. You know, so. Shoulder opening with the belt strap. Shoulder opening with the belt strap is where you take a strap and you put it back like
Oh
this.
yeah, that is like killer.
That is killer in this. Pectoralis shoulder area. You know the pecs, that's, it feels good. It's amazing shoulder opening. So those are some arm strengthening options. Mix in arm strengthening options with any leg poses. So say I'm in Warrior One. We do these, we do these, we do these, we do reverse prayer. Same with Warrior Two. You could do any of them. You know, it doesn't matter really. There's no weight bearing. You mess around, different stuff. That's what makes your classes a little bit different.
I had a teacher in Sarasota that was really into dynamic movement, but she did it in a really graceful way. So we'd be in like high lunge or something, and you'd use your arms to like move back and forth. And I just really liked that. It felt like more of a dance.
It can feel good.
It was nice.
And nice and slowly done in a
Yeah.
natural way. That's
Yeah.
really great. Yeah, really, really good. All right, so switch back to 49 now, back into the triangle family here. Let's keep plugging along. This is very, very important. This, like today, and explaining this sequencing, I think is one of the main days of the whole teacher training. It's just essential for you guys to not abide by the rules, but just know categories and poses that they fit into categories. And it just helps in your mind to understand yoga teaching. Okay, so then we got to twisting, half moon, and grabbing behind the back. Then, what I'm saying, which is, you know, people might not agree with, is I'm putting Warrior 3 in the triangle family because it's a straight-legged pose. And I think warrior poses are lunges. So that's, I categorize warrior poses with lunges because the front knee is bent. And this is a straight-legged situation, so I put Warrior 3 in the triangle family. I think it's misnamed.
Yeah, because you have a warrior family also there, so it's kind of...
The warrior family, in my opinion, warrior family are lunges. Those are all lunging poses. All warriors are lunging. So if I'm in Warrior 3, I'm not in a lunge, I'm in a straight-legged. So that's why I put that in the triangle family. That's just my logic. We talked about the hip open. Warrior 3 is what? Hip open or hip square? It's ideally hip square, but it's really one of the most demanding. If you put 2 blocks underneath somebody with their hands up on those blocks, can they square the hips easier?
Yeah.
So much easier. So much easier.
Where do you put the block?
Right, if you give it, say I'm in Warrior 3,
Oh,
and I get you 2 blocks, boom, all of a sudden, you have total control over hip square or hips open. It's only because we're in power yoga. Look at all those blocks. They just stay sitting over there. Maybe a couple people grab them.
Or blocks.
But everybody else is just going to hover here in Warrior 3, halfway in between. It's really dumping here, but really the ideal is to square the hips. What does it mean to square the hips? What anatomically? What's square? What part of the body's square? Now I'm in hip square from the front of that. The hip bones, which also you know where your hip bones are. Feel your hip bones. Everybody can feel them. What else do you call those? Yeah, the iliac crest, you call that, yes, and also you could call it the pelvic points. These are pelvic points, your hip bones. Those are, like if I'm standing here, this is hip square. They're equal distance from the front of the mat, these two bones right here, right? So all poses that are open hip, they're not equal distance from the front of the mat.
A tip I was given for Warrior 3 Paul was to point, the leg that's up, point the finger toes.
Point the toes down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you're here in Warrior 3, and I point my toes over to the side, it's totally different than if I point my toes and my knees straight down underneath. That will square the hips.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Standing split. All right, you guys like standing split?
No.
Yes.
No?
Yeah, it's my hip.
Hurts your hip and stuff like that does hurt your hip? It's asymmetrical. Its tendency is people dump it all onto one side. Maybe grab the blocks.
It's okay sometimes, like if I'm warm enough,
Right.
but it's that pinch in my hip that just,
You have sciatica.
I think I have a hip impingement, more on my right side, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you feel it all the way down to your feet?
no,
No?
just in the hip joint.
Just in the hip joint.
So, all right, standing split. Ideally, it's hip square. Everybody's cheating like crazy in
Oh
standing
yeah, it's
split.
hip square.
It's hip square, ideally, Suhan, yes. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's cheating like crazy, aren't they? So, I mean, the ideal, if anybody would ever listen to the teacher, would be you just put these in front of the people, slow down the pace of a sequence. When you get to standing split, here's what they want to do. Get your toes and your knee pointing down and get this pelvic point equal with this pelvic point. Turn it down, and then now I can lower. You have to get muscular in this leg. You need that muscular energy back there to hold it. You can't just let this go limp, otherwise it kind of opens. You have to inwardly rotate it, don't you? You have to use your thigh muscles to inwardly rotate the leg. And use the thigh muscles to inwardly rotate the leg, and that's what holds it in the good alignment. You just can't do it without using your leg muscles to inwardly rotate it. You have to. So that's why that muscular energy, all that inward rotation with all that is so emphasized to strengthen the legs so they can hold the hip square alignment, frankly. Pyramid pose. My favorite. You guys like it or no?
Yes. I like that.
It's so great. I love this pose. Do you not just get the greatest hamstring stretch up and down here? So is it hips open or hips square?
Square.
It is, but is it mostly done correctly or incorrectly?
Incorrect.
Look at my hip. Isn't it like this? This is open, and then I'm putting the hands here and kind of.
I feel like people go
Twist it.
wider than they should.
So the other thing about this pose is you're allowed to do. This pose does not have to be heel to inner arch. You're allowed to do heel to heel. That's heel to heel. Or even, I think, step it over even a little bit more. Cheat it over even a little bit more. Because now, I can square the hips.
To me, it hurts.
To cheat this over too much?
No, my sciatica, it's like the worst.
This is like the worst pose. So you got to get high up on these blocks and hold neutral spine.
Or even put my hands behind my back. So,
But the hands behind the back I don't like as much because it's going to be harder to control the neutral. Support yourself and then get the neutral spine and then squeeze your leg muscles and don't try for a stretch.
no, it's hard.
Or skip it altogether.
Yeah.
If something irritates you every single time, until you get really confident, like with doing the pose that hurts you with excellent alignment, because that's what Anusara says will heal it.
Yeah.
Then I say skip. You can skip it. You can skip it altogether. Do other things that don't hurt you, and then learn. You know, strengthen, stabilize other parts of the body, and then hopefully that'll go away. When you come back in, you won't come back. You'll have more flexibility to access that pose. You know, you can do this. This is the famous Ashtanga version of pyramid pose, which is called Parsvottanasana. Parsvottanasana. That's this. That's why sometimes I have people grab behind and I have them come up and do this and this sequence.
I have one question.
Yeah.
After you are there in neutral spine, are you supposed to get your chest to your front leg? Like,
I mean, flexible people can, but most of us can't. So don't say supposed to. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to hold the neutral spine, and you're supposed to receive a combination of stretching and strengthening benefits from the pose. But otherwise, don't worry so much about the external goal of the pose. You know? If you teach too much from the external goal of the pose, you'll get the type A personalities who are like, okay, I'm going to do it. And, you know, they're out of alignment, they're out of neutral, they're huffing and puffing, their breath, they're holding their breath and just doing. That's your type A person. And those people are the ones that hurt themselves.
yeah.
So what your goal in the pose is neutral spine, awareness, a combination of strengthening and stretching benefits, and that's it, no matter how it looks. Excellent questions. You guys can ask questions anytime. What else about pyramid pose? And then twisting triangle, which I call twisting pyramid. Why do I think twisting triangle is misnamed? What's triangle? A hip open or a hip square? Triangle is hip open. What are all twists?
Hip square.
Hip square. So there's no such thing as a hip open twist. Like I would never have you say, okay, go like this, and then start to twist, and keep this open, and twist over. I mean, you're going to destroy your back, or it's just weird. I don't even think you can do it. It's weird. It's a goal that's not in alignment with the way the body works. So I call this one pyramid twist instead of triangle twist. But traditionally, you'll hear it called triangle twist. But
Is this Parivrtta?
yeah, that's Parivrtta Trikonasana. But you could also call it Parivrtta Parsvottanasana. Some poses are just misnamed. When we come to like Warrior 3, I think that's Warrior 3 is misnamed. I don't think that's a warrior. Like I'm going to say Warrior
High lunge
poses.
should be warrior.
Yeah, exactly. High lunge should be Warrior 3, exactly. All warriors, I'm going to say, are lunges, not straight leg poses. And then triangle, to call something twisted triangle, triangle is the classic of classic hip open pose, triangle and Warrior 2. So if you're going to do a twist off of those, you're going to have to square your hips. It's no longer really triangle. I mean, it is still the shape of a triangle, the pyramid, right? But it's hip square. So anyway, those are just my little ways of looking at logic and naming poses, and I kind of change it around.
You do a series where you go triangle, then half moon, then standing split,
Yeah.
and then you go to a twisting half. Well,
Yeah, right.
Standing split around.
Correct. Twisting half moon, yeah.
Twisting half. Isn't that you're doing a hip open series, and then that twisting half moon, isn't that a symmetrical?
Yeah, but I do this all the time, by the way. Do you guys recognize this? I use this sequence all the time. This is like my bread and butter of vinyasa teaching, of privates. So the first two are the only hip open ones, though. Triangle and half moon. Once I square the hips, that's it. They're all hip square.
But you're like transitioning. You're not going directly to the aggressive pose of like twisting, or.
You could say you wanted to take the hip open stuff, eliminate triangle and half moon, and just start with twisting half moon. You could say, all right, here's your mountain pose. Now we're going to go into twisting half moon. Step 1 foot forward, put this down, and this is hip square, and then you could just go into the whole, the whole thing from there. You could. You don't have to do the hip open part of it. So, like I said, now I even put this whole thing on one side at the end of a Warrior 2 sequence. So they do Warrior 2, they do back and forth, they do parts organized, they come back to Warrior 2, then they start the triangle to make it harder for people in there. That's just what's required now. Because it's too easy for them. So the other major point that I want you guys to understand now is you don't have to teach all of this in a sequence where you do all the poses on one side and then switch to the other side, okay? If you're teaching beginners, it's best to just teach this whole series, this whole category of poses like this. Okay, triangle pose. Drop your right leg back, arms out, inhale, and triangle. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No half moon, just triangle. Come up, step to the front. Drop the other leg back, other side. Triangle pose.
Sorry, for a beginner, is it right to hold your leg to kind of support?
No, but you don't want any weight there. You're not allowed to push on the shin bone. So if the hand is there, it's just a little bit. It's not really holding the weight. No, this hand should be, the weight should all be in the legs, frankly. This hand should just be free. So, stepping back. Now, moving on to series. Half moon pose. Drop this back, launch forward, half moon on this side. Once I get the balance, there's no body weight on this hand, and then stand up. Half moon on the other side. Don't get the block. Let's try to use a block. Now, land it. Now, twisting half moon. One side. Land it. Twisting half moon on the other side. Hip square step. Then, you could do standing split, same thing. Standing split, both hands down. And then come back. Standing split the other leg. Then pyramid, one leg. Pyramid, the other leg. Twisting pyramid, one side. So do you understand? That's a key way to make your classes easier. No vinyasa in between. No starting out of three-legged dog, lunge your right foot forward. You're working from the front of the mat, the mountain pose, and you're doing yoga poses. Triangle pose, half moon pose, pyramid pose, twist pyramid pose, standing split, and you're just doing one side and then the other. And there's a lot of yoga teachers who believe that that's really, that guy's our bae. He's going to be teaching you guys later. He's a genius at assisting, a genius. You guys, this is our bae. He's going to be teaching you assists in a master class. He is a brilliant assister who, when his hands go on you, your hands go on your checkbook and you write him a check for as many privates as you can possibly get him to come over to your house and do.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, thank you so much. Good to see you.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Alfred. So, there's yoga teachers who believe they see me doing a series like this, Warrior 2, triangle, half moon, they're all on the same side. Oh, my leg's burning. Oh, switch now. You're in hip square. Keep going. Keep doing all this. Then vinyasa. They're going to say, that's too imbalanced. That's too many things on one leg before you balance out the body and do it's too asymmetrical of sequencing. Do you guys ever feel that? Emily, maybe that's what you're feeling a little bit. The series are just too long on one side.
I love it because I feel like I'm really upgrading.
Yeah.
It burns, right? It's burning to
I
hold.
like it both
It
ways.
doesn't burn me. It's like in
Pain,
here. Yeah, but it's totally different than what you guys are experiencing. So
Yeah, I just feel muscle burn, mostly my bone. Mostly right there. So, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you like it? Do you like a long series on one side and then a long series on the other?
Yeah.
It's considered more advanced. It's power yoga-ish. You like it, Claudia?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. But if you guys say you walk in and the person's never taken yoga before, they're not in good shape, maybe they're older, whatever, you're not going to expect them to work out of sun salutation A, sun salutation B, three-legged dog, lunge it forward, come up warrior 1, warrior 2. Don't expect that. Just use these incredible asanas, and we'll go through the warrior ones right now, the lunges, and just work from the front of the mat. One pose on one side. You know, if I was going to do lunge, and then forward, same pose, exactly through the other side. It'll make more sense to people. It won't be so confusing. What we're doing in here, in Wednesday night, and what we're doing is very confusing, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff on one side, including maybe some balancing on one leg stuff mixed in with some arm stuff, with crunching, you know. But that's the level that people are at. People love that. They understand it completely. Like Sharon has a sequence where you do, and people love it. It's really a complicated, advanced sequence. Don't expect to start your beginner students with something like that. You got to teach them Warrior 2 first. You know, what this is all about before they can start to flow and stuff like that. Younger people can catch on with the flow quicker. Like I say, if your students need therapeutic yoga, if they're a little bit older, if they're... God, I mean, it's almost like some people come to yoga and their mental capabilities are not excellent. You know what I'm talking about? It's just keep it simple for these people. They're not there to learn advanced sequences of, you know, just make them do Warrior 2 on one side for 30 seconds, and then Warrior 2 on the other side for 30 seconds. And they'll step back to the mat, and they'll be like, and then you just have to get into teaching them to breathe through there. Just keep it super simple with the basics of what we've learned when you're first beginning to teach beginnerish people.
I didn't know anything about like how to teach a beginners, and I was going to the beach to do yoga, and my mother and my sister, my mom's 57, and I want to go teach us, and I'm like, I really don't know how. They're like, well, just try. So I'm leading them through my sequence.
Right.
Poor mom, it's like, sorry, and I felt bad. I'm like, God, I want to give it to her, but I don't know how.
It's so true. When you guys come out of this teacher training, it's easier for you guys to teach a harder class than an easier class. Because you guys are fit and you guys do pretty strong workout yoga. For you to back up and know what it feels like for somebody who's in their mid-50s or mid-60s to start yoga, it's going to seem so basic to you to just go, wait a second, just go through this category just like this and just do the right leg and then the left leg with no flow from the front. And they'll be loving yoga. They'll think it's great. And what you're doing is you're using the poses. You know, you're not trying to string it together with vinyasas or, you know, complicated arm strengthening things in between. And then if you want to, you know, after you do some leg stuff, if you want to strengthen their arms, you know, make them do downward dog just as a pose. You know, with no legs up or anything. And I used to teach people and they're like, man, that class was hard. We were in that downward dog pose for like 5 reps. You know, and it's totally different when you get into gyms with the older people and in the condos or the recreation centers or the, you know, the senior citizens area. It's totally different. What?
Some older people are better at it than me. I notice, like, in some classes, I'm like, oh, I can't believe you can do that, and I can't.
But they've been doing it. They're not beginners. They've been practicing. It would be rare for somebody to be older and start yoga and have the body awareness to be able to flow really nicely. They've been taking yoga for 15, 20 years, those people. And yeah, I have a 70-year-old student, and she can do the headstand with her head not on the floor. Yeah, she's amazing. But she's been doing yoga for like 20 years. Okay, so let's look at the lunges. So after the triangle series, turn the page and look at our lunge options. So I'm saying lunges are warrior poses, and warrior poses are lunges. Basic lunge, knee down with padding. Basic lunge. The Sanskrit of this pose is Anjani. A-N-J-A-N-E-E. Asana. Anjani asana. Do you guys like this lunge? Like this?
Yeah.
Only if it doesn't hurt the knee, right? It really puts a lot on the knee. So, have you guys ever done this pose without a mat?
No.
Don't. It'll destroy your patella. The patella is the bone of the kneecap. You don't want that. So, you know, they can do this. I find this a little bit awkward. Do you? It's better than nothing. but it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Best is like, the absolute best is one of those little pieces of foam that's square, that's right underneath the knee. But a blanket can be good, a pillow, even a bolster. I could do this.
Do you have one of those squares there, like the really flat?
Those are the best. The square, I don't see any up there though. I only see
I
blocks.
think I've seen them, maybe.
They're in the
not
other
mine.
room, but then they suddenly disappear. People decide that they could better use it in their own home.
Because I see people like roll
I
on
can't
their
believe
upper
it, they took
thigh in this
Huh?
class.
I can't believe they take it.
People do it. I think yoga teachers take it too. Huh?
In that pose, people like roll onto their upper thigh instead of their knee. But then it's hard to like keep the hips right, the back right. And
Right. In an ideal
Just gonna
situation,
fit
you would be able to get above your knee onto your muscles here, and so you wouldn't be grinding your joint into the floor, and you'd be muscular. But not everybody can get there.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I love this little lunge, so I think it's great. I think it's just a classic thing to do. There's lots of arm stuff you can do. Sorry, talking about that in a second. With regard to the alignment of this one, though, what's the biggest no-no? Don't go over what? The knee should not come way, way over the foot, and the heel. If your heel starts to come up in the air, that's too much. If your heel is up, so what do they have to do if that happens? Get out of it, and then do what? Move your foot more forward. Way forward, way forward, way forward. Now, if I drop the hips down, the knee is still directly over. So watch out for that in this knee down lunge. Okay, knee down lunge with padding. Knee up, heel up. That's a runner's lunge. What's that block? That's this. This is kind of another. Do you guys like this pose?
Yeah.
It's hard for some guys, I think. Their hands don't touch the floor. It's very hard to get into neutral spine here. You're really rounded. So that's where the blocks, I think, really, now I can get in a neutral position. I can look forward and look at you guys and get my lumbar. But it's pretty aggressive, this. Hands down. You'll see a lot of this crappy hand position in this. Careful with that pose. Not that many teachers use it anymore. Paula uses it a little bit. And Paula even uses it in a dynamic movement between there and kind of pyramid or something like that. Does she not have some kind of thing going on like this? Like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not crazy about that move. Does it feel good to you guys?
It's not terrible. I think it warms my legs.
It warms your legs up. Okay. For me, that one doesn't really. That's a dynamic movement. That doesn't really work that well for me, but for Paula it does. So. All right. So in the lunge, the options: hands on knee, behind head, above head, elbows down. Okay. So when you're lunging, you can have your arms up. You have your hands in the prayer pose. You release your hands behind your back. You can do anything with your arms. Then you got the elbow down, low lunge. Elbows down, low lunge. That's this. How about this one? Do you guys like this?
Yes.
No?
Where's the
So
How can you not like this? It's incredible.
So hard.
Oh yeah, lizard.
Yeah, lizard.
I can't.
It's a hell of a lunge, isn't it? When I'm in that pose, I mean, that's like, I feel like, okay, I'm in yoga class right now. Huh?
It's really hard.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. So to make it easier, what can you tell the people to do? Use the block where?
Under your forearm.
Under your elbow. So you could put your elbow on this, and it makes it way easier. Or can't they even just come up like this? They can just come up like that too. They don't have to. Guys who are tight in their hips, it's hard to get your hips down below the level of your knee. You know, that's going to be tough. So you can use a block in that one. Prop yourself up. That's low lunge. Then, like low lunge twist, we got to get into all these galaxy ones like this. You know, that comes out of this. This is also an aggressive pose. On the back and the wrist. You like it, Meg?
It hurts my knee so bad.
It hurts your back knee or your front knee?
Just like right here at the back.
But if you're in this, which knee would it hurt? It would hurt the one that's on the ground. You got to get padding underneath. There's all these lunges kill unless you're padded in the knee. So just pad it as much as possible. Especially if you have a thinner mat. This mat, this black mat, is pretty good. It's pretty good. But if you have a thinner mat, careful. Sometimes I believe you use 2 mats with a pad underneath. Okay, and then bend the knee and grab the ankle back, the quad stretch. I think I was thinking of even these ones like this. See, this was a lot of pressure underneath. See my knee, it's on this bolster. There's no pain in my knee now. But so that's how much padding you can take. You know, those type of things. Then also, I started before, I started to do this side stretch. This starts to pull here. And also then King Arthur's pose, like, this one. That one. And then all of that leads into this. Right? The twisting lunge. You guys like this one? It's a classic. Do you like to try and bind?
Yeah.
People love it. It's a hell of a pose. It's amazing. And standing. So those are really advanced level 3 sequences. To stand up, bound like that, it's very advanced. You have to have shoulder mobility. You have to be absolutely strong and flexible in your back. Your legs have to be strong.
Elongate your spine big time.
I feel like only girls can do that.
There's a guy who's like a 60-year-old guy in the class this morning. He does it.
Really?
Yeah, he's like 60 years old.
I can't bind.
Yeah, he can bind and stand up, but he's been doing yoga steadily 20 years, you know.
That'll be you, Louise.
That'll be you, Louise.
That'll be
Yeah.
you.
The recent
Oh,
pose is
Huh?
called the back neutral
Not
spine.
In all of these poses, should your spine be in the neutral spine?
Yes.
Ideally, yes, in all of them. So in Anjaneyasana, what am I in, a forward bend or a back bend?
Forward. Or back.
This is a back bend. This is a back bend. So I might have to come here. But then when I come forward here, what am I in, a forward bend or a back bend?
Forward.
So lunges, you could be either in a back bend or a forward bend. So you have to figure it out. So neutral is the ideal. When you start twisting, you lose track of neutral, don't you? I mean, it's hard to think, I'm going to do all of this stuff, but if I were in this position, basically I'm twisting. What am I in, a forward bend or a back bend?
Forward.
I'm in a forward bend, so I'd probably just try and go like this a little bit.
Spine length.
You know, just a little bit within that, to be in neutral in that.
What about King Arthur's pose? What is it supposed to stretch, like your side core, or what is that?
You dislike it?
I hate it.
I love it. It's one of the easiest ones for me. It's super
Really?
easy. Yeah, it's so easy.
Is that supposed to like stretch your side?
It's a back bend. It stretches your side,
And your shoulders.
your shoulder. It just looks kind of cool. It's a cool way of doing a lunge. I don't know. It's a back bend though.
I can feel my knee going.
But you got to get tons of padding, man. I don't know. All those knee down series, you got to get the padding and put it underneath. I told the lady who is the sales representative of Manduka Mats, which is this black one with the padding. When I used to have the Miami Yoga Shala, I used to order mats from her to put them in our shop. And I would ask them, do you have any mats that are like half long or any scraps sitting around? And she would usually say, yeah, we got that. And I said, would you put those in our order? And then I would cut them up into 6x6 squares. And we had those as props. I had a stack of like 20 of just like this. If I were to cut this mat up, I would just cut it about like this, squares about like this. And everybody would put that underneath their knee and the knees down side, and there were no complaints anymore. It's the right prop for the job. Then somebody came up and said, we need to market that. That's a great prop. You need to, so. And then it dropped by the wayside, basically because I don't tear up mats anymore. I don't like cut them up anymore. I don't. So she visited and I told her that's what we
Well,
wanted.
you can
nothing
just
ever
cut
came.
the corner.
You could just cut the corner of your own mat, sure. Yeah, you could. That would be useful, it'd be better. But that padding for the knee down lunges is definitely required, definitely.
You can use a towel.
Did somebody turn off the AC?
It was awful.
It's too hot now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or was it too cold?
Too hot.
You know what? It was not. It was set to go down to 83, and it went to 83 and then shut off. Take it to 80. 80 feels cold in here. If you had 80 in your own apartment, though, you'd be like, 80? All right, so those are the lunges. What's the difference between lunges and like warrior 1 or warrior 2? What's the primary difference?
The foot.
The back foot is in a heel up position. So then you got your warrior 1 stuff, Virabhadrasana 1. We've already talked so much about this. So this is where heel to heel is allowed. Not necessarily just heel to inner arch, but heel to heel. So they allow you to cheat this over to try and square the hips forward, because warrior 1's hips square. They're looking back, different arm options, whatever. You know, you can get into some.
That's what we do in my class.
Sorry.
Warrior 2. Different options. You got tons of different. Backward warrior. You put the hand behind the back, slide it down the leg or on the hip. But what most people do is they try and make it easier. It's incorrect. They put the weight on the back and they sideways bow this knee in with body weight. That's horrible. Forward warrior. These are the versions of Parsva Konasana. You guys like this pose?
Yeah.
And this? Parsva Konasana. It's incredible. It's amazing to do that pose. Can you do it first thing right off the bat?
No.
You got to work into it. So whenever I get to Parsva Konasana, I know I've already done some good stuff. I'm like pretty deep in. And then I usually do it when I practice as many times as possible until my legs are really tired. I just, I might go back and forth from here to here a few times.
You need to open your hips a little though before you do that.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's hard for people to touch the floor at first. That's why the block is excellent in this.
When I'm in the ankle pose, I like to push to open. Is that okay?
Totally.
Okay, because I know some people rest it, but I like to actually dig in and open.
Cool, but just as long as the direction of your foot doesn't change either. Okay, so if you're in it and you want to dig in and open, and I start to push this, and you start to move this foot into crazy positions.
Kind of get some
and resist the knee back into the arm too. Support it like that.
So while here, the hand is allowed either inside or outside.
It's two different poses. Outside is the classic traditional because it keeps your hip more in line. If you go inside, your butt can stick out, just like putting your hand on the inside in triangle pose. This makes your butt stick out. So if you go inside here, your butt can stick out. You don't want that. If you come outside here, it makes you kind of stay in this really straight alignment. But the hand on the inside, this was my first power yoga teacher, Brian Kess. He loved this. The hand flat in this arm straight. He thought this was just great. And I think this was even before this was invented. I don't think he knew about this. He just loved this. But the classic pose is like this. And then, you just try and work this angle of this whole side body. Like, see how I can straighten my elbow? Like, look at my elbow. Here's one level of my elbow. Now here's another. You just work those. That's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful yoga pose.
Yeah.
It's the work of a lifetime to be in that pose. I really have a lot of respect
What's
for
the
that.
difference between putting your hand inside your leg, outside your leg?
Remember, if the hand goes on the inside of the leg, your butt might stick out a little bit, just like in triangle when you put your hand on
And then you can go and assist, and you can push the hip to the front.
But assuming nobody's assisting you, keeping the hand on the outside will keep you in a little straighter line. So the butt is not able to stick out; it's pushing forward. Actually,
But it's either better to put your elbow on the leg or outside rather than inside.
But inside is going to lead to binding behind here.
Yeah.
When people bind under, don't you see their butt immediately sticks out? I mean, is it the end of the world? Not really. They're out of, really excellent, perfect alignment, but people love that binding under, don't they? Do you guys like it? It's incredible on the shoulders. It takes so much strength in the legs. It's just got a lot. Then you can straighten this and do the bound triangle. Then you can step in and try and lift this foot up. Then you could step this foot in and try and lift this foot up. You know, so, but these are very advanced variations and sequences. So you take a sequence and you start with like Warrior 2. That would all start with Warrior 2. With the way I always do it, I always come up in Warrior 1, then you go to Warrior 2. Then you do, finally in here, you step in, and you end with the balancing on one leg pose. So sometimes the balancing on one leg poses can come at the end of a lunge sequence or a triangle
I
sequence.
like that angel pose.
The angel is...
No, you're in standing split and you bring your arms.
Oh, that's really tough. When you're in the midst of a
Yeah.
major sequence, okay? This is burning on fire. And then you're being asked to come up against gravity, like that. Major burn, right?
Yeah.
Twisting warrior, we kind of already talked about that. The easiest thing to do in twisting warrior is the prayer pose. Like that. Now,
Twisting warrior.
twisting warrior.
And then you go like in a lunge because you change the foot.
Definitely. So in Ashtanga, they're going to tell you to go into twisting warrior from warrior 1 with your back foot on the floor like this, which is, it should be hip square, but everybody's hip is open.
Yeah.
Then they're going to go along here. And they're like, no, don't lift that up. It's crazy that they make people do it. So most Ashtanga teachers, including Patrick, who we're going to have next weekend, they're going to allow this. They're going to say, okay, square your hip and drop this down. Now bring this across. And then you can rebuild. But the hips are square and you work in lunge. It's just so incorrect to try and do this pose. I can kind of do it, but it's immediate pain right there.
It's safer.
It's a hip open twist, which is wrong, I think.
Hip open.
Remember, all twists are hip square. So what you're trying to do is have a hip open and twist against that. It's not right on the hip. It's not good.
We just did that with
You use
Jason.
hands?
Jason,
You
man.
had to keep your foot down, and it was the first time I've ever had anyone tell me to do that, and it was so hard.
It comes from Ashtanga, and it comes from people like Jason, who's obviously capable of doing it.
'Cause I couldn't.
That guy can really move.
I couldn't do it.
But you can't, again, I would never mandate that. I wouldn't walk in here and look at...
Yeah, if you're not on that level.
Remember in our good rescue
I would not tell you guys, I wouldn't walk into a class with 20 people and say, you guys are going to do this now. That takes a lot of training, or maybe you're just built in a certain way that can do it right away. It's not fundamentally sound. If you can do it, you probably felt a lot more.
Yeah.
But it's not fundamentally sound. Why? What's the fundamental that you're violating? All twists are hip square. No twist is ever going to come from a hip open position, ideally. Okay, so there's your lunge options, your warrior series. Now let's go back to page 38. See why this takes so long? Okay, so see where we've gotten in terms of the sequencing? This is the third time we've talked about this.
Yeah.
And we're down to number 2, number 4, 2.4. So then we have the splits. There's 2 kinds of splits. There's straddle splits and scissor splits. So this is straddle splits, like you're straddling something. Is this symmetrical or asymmetrical? Symmetrical. So is there any need to do a left side and a right side of this?
Unless you want to twist your arms up.
There's no need to, though. Unless you start to go into some asymmetrical thing from here, But basically, this is a beautiful, symmetrical, forward bend straddle. This is just one of the most natural shapes of the human body. It's real easy for people to grab a couple blocks and be taught neutral spine. From here, watch my lower back, to here. Real easy to teach that. How should your feet be in this pose? Say some more. What else? How else should the feet be?
like.
Toes turn.
Straight or a little inward.
Let's say the outsides of the feet are parallel to the front and back of the mat, or the outsides of the feet are parallel to each other. How about the toes? You say I'm doing a sequence that came from low lizard into straddle, forward bend. You'll see this all the time. What's wrong with my feet?
They're not parallel.
The toes have to be on the same line. So watch out for that. You know, this is a very symmetrical, straightforward pose. This should be one of the easiest ones to teach. Now, with regard to my feet, what's the most common tendency in terms of four-wheel drive with my feet? Where does the weight kind of want to go?
Inside.
It wants to drop down into inner ankle, and you lose these outer foot points. So you have to push through the outer foot points. Sometimes you hear the teacher say, lift up the inside and then roll the energy down the outside, up the inside. So this is like a leg loop of energy. Up the inside, down the outside. Toes, I sometimes say slightly pigeon toe, but I don't want you to be pigeon toe. That's too much. But slightly pigeon toe, feet, feel slightly pigeon toe to have it straight. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
Pigeon toe would be like this. Toes in, heels out. That's not straight anymore. That's pigeon toe. That's too much. So slightly pigeon, if I say slightly pigeon toe, it'll actually be straight because straight feels slightly pigeon toe. That's why I say that. All right, and then this classic of all classics. You guys like it?
Really impressed. Further than I can go.
Crazy, right?
With props, yeah.
With props, it's okay.
With the blocks, it helps a lot. Trying to touch the floor. You'll see people landing in the horrible finger position.
I like the bolster between.
Yeah, that's nice. The bolster between
The bolster underneath.
Like
Yeah.
in between your legs.
Where?
Like,
vertically.
no, like horizontally. Right?
This is too small.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling it down.
Do you keep your spine straight?
Yeah, you can kind
I
of put your
need
legs
a
on the ball.
This
your
one, my
hands on
ball,
the
this is
bolster.
too small. I need a large. I need
Try
a
this
problem.
one?
And like,
But a big bowl.
All right, the fact is, if you get a big class and you're in a flow, you're probably not going to take the time
For everyone to get a bolster.
for everyone to get a bolster and do that kind of stuff. But you're right. I'm glad that you know that you can do a bolster. Can't you use a block? Haven't you ever seen this?
Uh-huh.
This, with this underneath my butt. Watch this. Oh, that's super nice too. You just rest right on that block. Now, what's the main problem? Is this a forward bend or a back bend?
Forward.
It's a forward bend. So what is everybody doing incorrectly? What do I need to do to move to neutral? I need to get that back. Is this a hip open or a hip square pose?
Square.
It should be a hip square. But what do all the ballerina, dancer girls, figure skater girls, but why do they do that?
They drop to the right
You can
side.
get down farther.
You can go way further. You can go way further. If you're going to go for that major extension, you're going to open your hip back, just like Warrior 3 and Three-Legged Dog. Warrior 3, Three-Legged Dog, and splits are ones that should be hip square. My pelvic points are equal distance from the front of the mat. It should be, but everybody cheats this one way back and opens it up to try and get lower down in the
But
place.
once you're like all the way down in ballet, they pick your front leg up and that breaks in.
They do that too. I've seen that. So if somebody had a bad back, are they allowed to do hip open cheating in poses that should be hip square? No, they're not allowed to do that. That's how you get them out of the bad back. You make them do hip square in all the poses that are supposed to be hip square, and that's mandated. Then, when their hips are square, what does that mean that happens with their trunk above their hips? What's possible now? Neutral spine, but also symmetrical. Symmetrical is possible. Because you could be in neutral spine. I could have this back and still neutralize my spine. But I'm not symmetrical. This is forward and this is back. I'm not symmetrical. So when your hips are square, the possibilities there for symmetrical above your hips and neutral, and that's how you heal the back. That's how you do it. You keep it neutral and symmetrical in every pose if you can.
Would you want to keep them out of that pose?
Yeah, or keep them out of that pose. Yes, keep them out of that pose. Yes, yes. Or just don't even call it out. Some teachers, what I see now is they have an excellent instruction of alignment, but I would say their sequencing makes it so that even though they can describe what to do well, the sequences make it so you're not going to be really that successful because they're putting people in poses that they shouldn't be putting them in. And when I teach the privates, instead of, maybe I can explain the alignment very well, but I also just don't try any poses where I think they're going to be really at risk. You know what I'm saying? So you can play it a little conservatively that way too. I haven't been calling out splits that much. Some people just love it. Raise your hand if you love it, the scissor splits. You love it, huh? Raise your hand if you don't, if you don't like it at all. So if you don't like it and they call it out, what's the variation that makes it easier? The half split, the half split. This would be the runner's lunge, I would say.
I heard a different name though for that. It was something lunge, right?
Some kind of lunge? Perhaps so. I'm not sure, but perhaps so. So this leg is straight. This knee is straight underneath. You definitely, hand them the blocks so they're not straining like this.
Can you I put my hands on my foot and stretch my butt back.
This?
And balance all my knees.
Both?
Yeah.
Could be good. Padding underneath the knee again could be good. So you can do half splits instead. Sometimes if it's too much, I'll just drop back into this type of thing too. It's not bad for my knee, but a lot of people can't do it. But fortunately, I can do this, no problem. This actually feels good to just sit on my foot like that. I could sit like this for a while. All right, so now we got through the first two categories of poses. And what time is it? 2 what?
10.
All right, well, I think what we should do now then is we should do our pranayama and relaxation. Then you can take a little short break, and then Amy's going to come and teach for 2 hours. Okay? That was a lot of talking. And as you can see, we're not